Today's session is on IBM Security Guardium. In this session, we'll discuss one of the main features within IBM Security Guardium data protection, which is called Discover Sensitive Data. We have today with us Shashi.
So the agenda for today's session is I'll go over a general product overview of IBM Security Guardium by talking about the problem statements or scenarios, followed by how Guardium can help solve the problems, and talk about different offerings from Guardium throughout the data security lifecycle. Then I'll deep dive into one of the important features within Guardium called Discover Sensitive Data, which is the core of today's discussion. I'll start with a simple demo of how Discover Sensitive Data works, and then I'll talk about how you can tip the balance between finding sensitive data, minimizing false positives, and how to improve performance. I'll also talk about some of the advanced rule criteria options that will affect the accuracy of the results, and some run options that will affect the performance. And if time permits, we'll quickly talk about the auditing and the scheduling, the whole discover sensitive data scenario. Okay, so before we talk about Guardium data protection, let's understand the business problem, right? What are the business problems Guardium is trying to address? So we know data security is everyone's business, and in today's digital transformation and shift to hybrid cloud has created a perfect storm of data complexity, right? So oftentimes sensitive data exists beyond the knowledge of the person who currently owns that data, right? So for that, we need to understand what is sensitive data or sensitive personal data. So for example, your name, your phone numbers, your credit card numbers, your bank account numbers, and ID numbers such as your passport numbers or social security number. And in India, it's Aadhaar and PAN. So all these can be classified as personal or personal sensitive data, right? So most of the times, organizations wouldn't even realize they are storing such sensitive data, right? So for example, during company mergers, the parent company wouldn't even know where the data is stored for the child company or the company they're acquiring. So this is such a common yet extremely vulnerable scenario, because you cannot protect sensitive data unless you know it exists, right? So there is a huge interest in discovery of these sensitive data and classify them. So this becomes important because as the organizations start growing, they start to store these kind of sensitive or sensitive personal information, right? So for example, consider any e-commerce businesses today, right? So to provide a good user-friendly experience, they tend to save your personal information such as your name, your email address, your home address, and whatever the bank account numbers or the credit or the debit card information, so that with just one click, you can purchase whatever you want from their website. Now, since they're saving your personal details, it becomes high priority for these businesses to protect your personal data, right? Because I don't have to explain what would happen if your data gets it into wrong hands or your identity itself is stolen, right? So this will be a huge risk for these businesses. So in today's information security needs, being ignorant of such data is not an excuse anymore. And if the bad guys finds it first or accidentally release, then the penalty will be huge as per EU regulations, which became effective back in May 2018, right? And also with the new regulations such as PCI, HIPAA, GDPR, often there'll be pressure on organizations to be compliant with these regulations, right? So for example, if you're dealing with healthcare industries in US, then you must be compliant with HIPAA regulations or how your organizations react to data breaches. Further, let's say you discover such sensitive data, but how to monitor your sensitive data and protect it, right? So most of the times, the security analysts within an organization are bombarded with a lot of false positives or low priority threats. And how can they prioritize the risks, right? So this is not just one business problem here. I can keep on adding such problems as statements or scenarios, but let me stop here and address how Guardium can help address most of these problems that I've defined here. So as you can see, we have various Guardium products in the IBM security portfolio to meet the requirements in different phases of the data security lifecycle. So in simple terms, you can say IBM Security Guardium is a family of data security softwares available in IBM Security portfolio. So Guardium is a complete data security solution that can adapt as the threat environment changes, providing you complete visibility, compliance, and protection throughout the data security lifecycle. We know organizations and enterprises are challenged with understanding where their data resides, whether on cloud, big data platforms, or on premises, and whether it needs to be further protected, right? So as you can see in the flow, the first stage is to discover the sensitive data, and Guardian Data Protections discover and classify can find sensitive and regulated data wherever it resides, whether it's on premises or on cloud, and also discovers whether the data is stored in a structured or unstructured way, and provides you insights into your data and uncovers any vulnerabilities, right? And Guardium not only uncovers sensitive data, but also with the auto discovery functionality within Guardium Data Protection, it has the ability to find undetected and unmonitored databases over the network. Right. And also with the vulnerability assessment feature, you can identify vulnerabilities in your data environments too. So for example, you might have protected your data in one of your DB servers, but you might be using a very old version of it, and that might have a security vulnerability. So such things can be uncovered with the vulnerability assessment feature. Now, you have discovered the sensitive data. Now, how can you protect it, right? So that is where the second component in this data security lifecycle comes into picture, of just encryption protection, right? Where Guardium Data Encryption and Guardium Key Lifecycle Manager, called GKLM, can encrypt sensitive data in all states and across environments. When it comes to monitoring, analyzing, and responding, the fundamental challenge with data security is identifying who has the access and what can they do with it, right? So enterprises need real-time activity monitoring, so the mission-critical data remains protected. So when it comes to analyzing the data by who has the access and why are they accessing it, and analyzing if there is a problem in terms of access given to the data, and if there is a problem, then how to respond and to react to it, right? So all these three phases of monitoring, analyzing, and responding can be achieved through Guardium Data Protection and Guardium Insights. So when it comes to compliance needs, such as PCI, GDPR, or HIPAA, it's a challenge, right? So Guardium can speed up your compliance activities by using pre-built templates for regulations and automate your compliance workflows. So in turn, this will enable faster reporting, streamlined processes, reduce total cost of ownership, and stronger compliance posture. Right. So in today's discussion, I'll be focusing on Guardium Data Protections, discovery and classification data, which is the very first phase in this data security lifecycle. So let's quickly talk about some dollar figures Guardium can help save you, right? I can't say Guardium can save you X amount of dollars for your organization, because when it comes to data security, the demands are not a fixed rate. And nobody can pay the price on organization's reputation or customers' confidence, right? It's priceless. But I have some data that shows how much it has costed organizations when there was a data breach or certain compliances were not met. So the cyber attacks were expected to have cost the world around 8 trillion US dollars in 2023, and this number is going higher in 2024 and 2025, right? And also every year, US alone loses an average of close to 9.5 million US dollars to data breaches per instance, followed by Middle East, which is a little bit over $8 million. Now, the violators of GDPR may be fined up to 20 million euros or up to 4% of their annual worldwide turnover, so whichever is higher. So if you're using Guardium, most likely all your compliance requirements are met, so you don't have to contribute to these dollar amounts that I mentioned here. Now let's deep dive into the most important features of Guardium Data Protection, which is discover sensitive data. In a simple terms, we call it as a classification process. So I'll give a general overview of this classification process. And in this slide, I have mentioned what goes into classifier and what comes out, right? So what goes into classification here is basically, I have one of the things I've grouped here is a unique user-friendly name along with a category and a classification labels. And that label will be used down the road for tagging violations. And the magic happens in terms of what to discover, right? So that's where you define patterns and filters that are configured as classification policy rules that will define what kind of data we are going to search for. Now, you will also have to tell us where to search for. That's going to be your data source definitions. And there are some other options that you can provide, and that's basically the sample size and sample type. And I'll be going over in detail during the demo what these individual components are. Okay. And in the basic sense, that's the information you feed into the classifier, and the type of information that you get back called outputs here, which is the first thing is the report results, which is a list of columns, tables, schemas, and catalogs that match the rules that you define in the what to discover component. It's more than just a flat list of tables and columns. We do give a detailed comments that explains results, and you will get what we call a process log. So even though you don't get the results back, you always get the individual records of events and statistics for a specific classification run. Now, there are things you can trigger when a match is detected. So for example, what we do is we populate groups that will automatically add sensitive data objects and fields to the groups. And these are used in other parts of Guardium product in the data security policies. So when I talk about group, think about it like an entity that can be shared across different features, different applications within Guardium. Okay, so next is before going to the demo, I want to quickly show the sensitive data, the sensitive data scenario and the structure of it. So by finding the sensitive data, your biggest risk is what you don't know, right? So you don't want to find the sensitive data for the sake of finding it, but you want to do something with it. You want to probably protect it, right? So you can create policies to alert when there is any access to this sensitive data, and also tie it to a compliance workflow. So this is how discover sensitive data scenario is tied, right? So the first four section can create a classification policy. The middle section, you can create some access policies. And the third section, you can tie it all together with the compliance workflow.